That night still plays in my mind like a movie I never asked to watch. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at the reservation confirmation on my husband's phone. Sunset Garden, table for two, 8 p.m. Not my perfume on his clothes, not my name on the reservation, and not my smile he was planning to sit across from. It was the kind of truth that hits you so hard your heart forgets how to beat for a second. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even let him know I saw it. Instead, something colder and honestly stronger rose inside me. A strange mix of heartbreak and clarity. That's the moment the hook of my story began. The night my husband took his mistress on a romantic dinner, I showed up with her husband and turned their fairy tale into a nightmare. And hey, before we go any deeper, if you love shocking, messy, real-life revenge stories like this one, go ahead and subscribe. Because trust me, what happens next will have you glued to the screen. So here's how it really started. After seeing that reservation, I just sat there for a moment, letting the betrayal sink in. Not the kind that bursts out of you, but the kind that sits heavy in your stomach and whispers, "You're not crazy. Something is wrong." He walked past me that evening, acting like everything was normal, kissed my forehead, told me he had a work dinner, and left wearing the shirt he knows I love. I watched him go, knowing exactly where he was headed and who he was meeting. My hands shook, but not from fear anymore, more from adrenaline. I grabbed my phone, called the restaurant, and asked for a reservation at 8 p.m, right next to his table. But here's the twist I didn't see coming. While looking deeper into the messages he thought he'd deleted, I discovered the woman he was meeting wasn't single. She had a husband. And from the little info I found, it looked like he had no clue about her little double life. So I did something I never imagined myself doing. I reached out to him. I told him everything. And instead of shouting or denying, he went completely quiet. Then said 9 words I'll never forget. "Tell me where to meet you, I'm coming." And just like that, the two of us, 2 strangers, pulled together by betrayal, planned to walk into that restaurant side by side. Not angry, not dramatic, calm. Like 2 people finally done being lied to. I'll never forget the moment we stepped through the restaurant doors. The lighting was warm, the music soft, people chatting over wine and candlelight. And there he was, my husband, laughing, reaching for her hand like he had never been married a day in his life. But the best part? He had no idea that his entire night was about to collapse because I walked in with her husband. And when our eyes met across that room, everything stopped, his smile dropped, her fork froze in midair. Even the waiter paused like he knew something explosive was about to happen. And that right there was just the beginning. For a long time, I believed my marriage was steady, not perfect, but solid. We had routines, comfort, and the kind of quiet life people dream about. My husband, Ethan, worked long hours at an engineering firm, and I managed a small real estate office downtown. Our days were predictable. Wake up, coffee together, a quick kiss at the door, late dinners, tired smiles, weekends at home. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. Or at least, I thought it was. Looking back, I can't believe how many things I brushed aside. Little shifts, small changes that I blamed on stress or work. The first sign was simple. Ethan started waking up earlier than me, something he never did before. He would shower, shave, put on cologne, his expensive one, and leave before I even sat up in bed. He said he wanted to beat traffic. I accepted it. Then he started dressing better. He used to grab any shirt that wasn't wrinkled, but suddenly everything he wore was ironed, matched, and smelled like fresh laundry. He bought new shoes, new ties, even a new watch. When I teased him about glowing up, he laughed it off and said he wanted to look more professional. Next came the phone. God, the phone. Ethan had never been secretive with it. He used to leave it anywhere, counter, couch, bathroom shelf. But suddenly, the phone was glued to him. If it buzzed, he grabbed it. If a message popped up, he tilted the screen away. He even changed the lock code, and that stung more than I admitted. Still, I kept telling myself that maybe I was overthinking. Maybe work was stressful. Maybe he was going through something he didn't talk about yet. I didn't want to be the wife who jumps to conclusions. I didn't want to believe that the man I married, the man I trusted, was slipping away from me. But even as I tried to soften the truth, my body knew what my heart wasn't ready for. I felt this quiet tension growing in the house, like the air around us had changed. He wasn't present anymore. He'd come home late, eat half his dinner, say he was tired, and fall asleep on the couch. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't distant on purpose. He was just somewhere else. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, somewhere I couldn't reach. The worst part was how I kept fighting with my own instincts. A part of me whispered that something was wrong. Another part begged me not to ruin our life with suspicion. I kept choosing denial, choosing silence, choosing hope. But hope doesn't stop the truth, and the truth was already walking toward me, step by step, even while I kept pretending not to see it. The perfume on his jacket wouldn't leave my mind. It clung to the fabric like a secret he never meant for me to touch. I kept telling myself it could have been from a colleague, from a crowded elevator, from anywhere, but the truth was already whispering in the back of my mind. I just wasn't ready to listen yet. For 2 days, I tried to push it away. I cooked dinner, folded laundry, sat beside him on the couch while he scrolled through his phone like I wasn't even there. And every once in a while, that same faint smell, sweet, floral, too young for me, would drift past my nose, as if daring me to notice. Then on a quiet Thursday evening, I checked our joint bank account. It was harmless, normal, just something I did once in a while. But my heart froze when I saw it. Sunset Garden Restaurant, reservation for 2. A place we had only been to once years ago and only for anniversaries or celebrations. There was no reason for him to be there. No reason to spend that kind of money. No reason to hide it. He hadn't said a word. Not a hint. Not a plan. Nothing. I stared at the transaction for a long time, my chest tight, my fingers cold. I kept imagining he would walk in, laugh and say, "Babe, it was a surprise for you." I waited for that sentence like a lifeline. But he didn't say anything that night, or the next morning, or even when he kissed my forehead and rushed off to work like he was late for something more important than me. I tried to brush it off, but something inside me sank, like a stone dropping to the bottom of a dark lake. That evening, the final blow came. He left his phone on the table while taking a shower. He never left it out of his sight. Ever. The screen lit up, and I swear my heart stopped beating. A message, a name I didn't know, and the words that shattered the last bit of hope I was holding on to. "See you at 8, babe, can't wait." I couldn't breathe. The room felt too quiet. Too still. My ears rang like someone had plugged my head with noise. I didn't open the message thread. I didn't need to. That one line told me everything. He walked out of the bathroom minutes later, wrapped in a towel, humming like a man with a free heart. When he saw me, he smiled. So easy, so casual, and said he had a work dinner that night. He even kissed my cheek as he walked past, leaving tiny drops of water on my skin like reminders of the lie he had just told. I stood there, frozen, watching him dress in the good shirt, the one he never wore for me anymore. He fixed his collar, sprayed expensive cologne, looked at himself in the mirror with the expression of a man preparing for something exciting. Not work, not business, someone else. Someone who wasn't me. But I didn't ask questions, I didn't confront him, I didn't let him see how much it hurt. I simply nodded, wished him good luck, and watched him walk out the door with a smile on his face and betrayal on his hands. And as the door clicked shut, something inside me shifted. It didn't break, it hardened. This wasn't going to end with tears. It wasn't going to end with begging. It wasn't going to end with me sitting alone wondering why I wasn't enough. No. If he wanted a secret dinner, I was going to give him a night he would never forget. When he finally left for work, I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the message that had popped up on his screen only minutes earlier. "See you at 8, babe. I can't wait." Those words didn't just hit my heart. They punched straight through it. My first instinct was to break down, but something inside me felt strangely calm, almost frozen. I wasn't shaking. Not yet. I just kept replaying his voice in my head, the way he kissed my cheek before walking out the door, the way he said, "I might be late tonight. Don't wait up." He lied so easily it scared me. I walked into the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face, trying to breathe. I wasn't the type of woman to spy or snoop, but then everything changed. His phone was still on the dresser where he'd forgotten it. Normally, he never forgot it. It was always glued to him like a second skin. That alone told me he was distracted, maybe excited, maybe thinking about her. My hands trembled as I picked it up, but within seconds the calm returned. A very dangerous kind of calm. I opened the messages. I wasn't ready for what I saw, but I kept reading anyway. There were texts, saved images, late-night jokes, their private little world unfolding right in front of me. Pictures of wine glasses, hotel rooms, the rental car receipt he'd sworn was for a business trip. And then there was her photo. Beautiful, younger, smiling like she'd just won something, and maybe she thought she had. I sat on the bed, scrolling, feeling the anger rise in slow waves. Not loud anger, quiet, intentional, calculated. Every lie he had told me in the past 3 months now made perfect sense. The sudden gym obsession, the new cologne, the way he picked fights just to leave the house. I remembered every apology he had tossed my way like a cheap coin. But what caught my attention the most wasn't the messages themselves, it was the pattern. I noticed a name he rarely mentioned. A man. He wasn't part of the affair, at least not directly, but I saw a photo of her with that man, same last name, and that small detail lit up something in my mind. I scrolled deeper, searching, and then I found it, a wedding photo. She was married too. For a second, I sat perfectly still, air locked in my lungs. She wasn't just cheating with my husband, she was betraying someone else too, someone who probably loved her, someone who probably trusted her, just like I trusted him. My heart didn't hurt anymore. It burned. I whispered out loud, "So it's not just me." And that changed everything. Instead of crying, I felt clarity. A cold, sharp clarity that made me sit up straighter. I opened social media, searched her name, clicked her profile, and there he was. Her husband. Michael. Tall, serious-looking, the kind of man who seemed steady, dependable. The kind of man who had no idea what was happening behind his back. And suddenly I knew exactly what I needed to do next. I grabbed my phone, not his, and took screenshots of everything. Every message, every picture, every reservation, every hotel check-in. My hands were steady now, almost too steady. I emailed it all to myself in case his phone locked me out. Then I put his phone back exactly where he left it. I stood in front of the mirror and stared at myself. Not the betrayed wife, not the broken, naive woman he thought he could toy with. I didn't see weakness. I saw someone who had been pushed too far for too long. I saw a woman ready to flip the script. I wiped my face, pulled my hair back, and whispered, "Okay, let's find the truth. All of it." That was the moment I decided I wasn't going to confront my husband tonight. I wasn't going to shout or argue or beg. I was going to expose the whole thing. But first, I had to find the other person whose world was about to be destroyed just like mine. The man who deserved to know the truth just as much as I did. The woman my husband thought he could keep in the dark was gone. A new version of me had stepped forward, quiet, focused, and ready for war. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed beside the man I thought I knew, listening to him breathe peacefully while my heart beat like a drum. The messages I saw kept replaying in my mind. Her laughing selfie, his flirty reply, the way he wrote, "I miss you already." Every word cut deeper than the last. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how long I had been living with a stranger. The next morning, when he kissed my forehead and said, "Long day today, don't wait up," I almost laughed. I had become invisible in my own marriage, and that hurt more than the cheating. He didn't even see me anymore. As soon as he left, I sat on the edge of our bed and opened his phone again. My hands were shaking, but not from sadness, this time from a quiet, controlled rage. I scrolled deeper. Hotel receipts, private chats, secret pictures, dinners I never knew about. He had a whole second life carved out, one filled with candles, wine, and sweet words he never gave me. The more I dug, the more I felt my heart turn cold. Then, a twist. A message from the mistress caught my eye. Not the message itself, her last name. I recognized it. I had seen it somewhere recently. But where? I opened her Instagram, and there it was, her wedding photo. Her smiling with a tall, serious-looking man holding her waist. The caption read, "Forever, Michael." My breath caught in my throat. She wasn't single. She wasn't an innocent girl my husband had fallen into temptation with. She was married, cheating on her own husband the same way mine was cheating on me. A wave of anger crashed over me, hot, wild, electrifying. But right behind it came something else. Something sharp. Something calculated. If she has a husband. If he knows nothing. If he finds out, The pieces in my mind began to rearrange themselves like a puzzle finally revealing its picture. I could expose them both, not in secret, not quietly, but in a way they could never forget. I found her husband's Facebook. His pictures were public. He looked steady, mature, a man who seemed to love deeply, a man who didn't deserve this any more than I did. I clicked through his page, my heart sinking when I saw his posts, grateful for my wife's support. She's my rock, my best friend. The guilt hit me for a moment. I was about to break this man's heart, but he had the right to know. More than anyone, he deserved the truth. He deserved to see what was happening behind his back. For a long minute, I hovered my finger over the message button. My chest tightened. If I told him, everything would explode. 4 lives would crash at once. There would be screaming, crying, maybe even violence. Marriages would shatter. Families would break. Did I want that? Yes. Not out of cruelty, but because lies need consequences. And I was done being the quiet, forgiving wife. I slowly exhaled, opened the chat box, and typed 2 words that would change everything. We need to talk. I held my phone tight, scrolling through the screenshots again and again until my chest felt hollow. How long had this been happening? How many nights had he lied straight to my face? How many times did I smile at him, believing every word while he was out building a secret life without me? Part of me wanted to run downstairs and confront him right there. I pictured myself yelling, crying, throwing the truth on the table like broken glass. Another part of me imagined packing my bags quietly and disappearing before he even noticed I was gone. But something in me resisted both ideas. None of it felt enough. None of it felt right. I didn't want him to see me fall apart. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of watching me break. I wanted him to feel what I felt, the shock, the betrayal, the pain that knocked the air right out of my lungs. I wanted his world to tilt the way mine had tilted when I discovered the truth. And that's when a thought slipped into my mind, soft at first, then louder, then impossible to ignore. What if I don't confront him at home? What if I catch him right in the middle of his little romantic date? What if I walk into that restaurant and flip their whole night upside down? The idea hit me so hard, I actually stopped breathing for a second. My heart raced, my hands shook, but underneath all that fear was something else. Control. I could almost picture it, the dim lighting, the candles, the fake romance, and then me walking in. Not alone. With someone who deserved to know the truth just as much as I did. Her husband. Oh God. The thought made my knees weak, but it also made sense. Why should I be the only fool in this story? Why should he get to sit there smiling like he wasn't being betrayed too? I stood up and paced the room, my breath shaky, my heart pounding like a warning bell. It felt dangerous, maybe even insane, but the more I imagined it, the more it felt like justice. Real justice. Not screaming, not begging, just revealing everything exactly where they thought they were safe. I looked at myself in the mirror, eyes puffy, face exhausted, soul bruised. But then, slowly, I straightened up. I whispered, "This ends my way." I grabbed my phone again and opened the mistress's social media. I scanned her posts, her pictures, her perfect little curated life. And then I found him. The husband. He looked strong, serious, like someone who didn't deserve any of this. I wondered what he would do if he knew. Would he be calm, explosive, heartbroken? I didn't know, but he deserved the truth. That much was clear. The thought wasn't just tempting anymore. It was right, fair, necessary. I sank back onto the bed, breathing hard, a strange mix of fear and courage swirling inside me. And then I whispered it out loud, almost to convince myself it was real. I'm going to show up at that dinner, and I'm taking her husband with me. The room felt still after that. I barely slept that night. My mind was racing too fast, my thoughts spinning in circles. By morning, I felt like I'd aged years in just a few hours. But strangely, I also felt sharper, clearer, like a woman who had finally stopped begging for the truth and decided to take it for herself. I made myself a cup of coffee, but my hands were shaking so badly I barely managed to hold the mug. Everything felt unreal, like I was living someone else's life, someone else's nightmare. But the plan kept replaying in my mind, steady and loud. I could see the whole scene playing out, the restaurant, the candlelight, the fake romance, and then me, showing up with the one person who deserved answers just as badly as I did. The idea felt reckless, dangerous, maybe even a little crazy. but it also felt right. It felt like justice. And once that thought rooted itself in my mind, there was no shaking it. I sat on the couch with my phone in my hand, staring at the mistress's husband's profile picture, trying to gather the courage to reach out. What was I supposed to say? Hi, you don't know me, but your wife and my husband are having an affair. Do you want to help me crash their date tonight? Who even says something like that? My heart was thumping so hard it felt like it was echoing in my ears. But I needed answers, and he deserved the truth. So I typed out a message, short, direct, but careful. My fingers hovered over the send button for a long second before I closed my eyes and tapped it. The second I sent it, my stomach twisted. I didn't know if he would respond. I didn't know if he would believe me. I didn't know if I was about to make this entire situation 10 times worse. But he replied, fast. His first message was a simple, "Can we talk?" And suddenly, everything felt real. We decided to meet at a small cafe on the other side of town. The whole drive there, my hands were ice cold, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. When I walked in and saw him sitting by the window, staring at his phone with a hollow expression, I knew instantly that he wasn't just suspicious, he already knew something was wrong. Sitting down across from him felt heavier than anything I'd done in my life. And when I finally showed him the screenshots, the messages, the pictures, I watched his entire world shatter right in front of me. His face tightened, his jaw clenched, and for a moment I thought he might get up and walk out. But instead, he closed his eyes, breathed deeply, and whispered, "Thank you for telling me." We sat there in silence for a long time. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't forced. It was two broken people trying to make sense of a truth we never asked for. He wasn't angry at me. He wasn't emotional or dramatic. He was calm, almost too calm, and that scared me a little. When he finally opened his eyes and looked at me, he asked one simple question: "What do you want to do?" And that was the moment I told him my plan. The restaurant, the reservation, the confrontation, everything. He didn't argue. He didn't hesitate. He didn't ask if I was sure. He just nodded slowly, like a man who had already lost everything and wanted one last moment of clarity. "We'll do it together," he said. In that moment, I felt a strange, unexpected sense of solidarity, a connection born not out of friendship, but out of shared betrayal. We weren't partners. We weren't allies. We were two people who had been lied to, disrespected, and used, and tonight, we were taking our power back. As we stood up to leave the cafe, my heart was pounding again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was the feeling of a woman walking toward the truth with her head held high. The night finally came, and I could barely believe I was really doing this. I stood in front of my mirror, just staring at myself, really looking at myself for the first time in weeks. My hands were slightly shaking, not from fear, but from this strange electric energy that had been building inside me ever since I discovered the affair. I wasn't dressing up for him. God, no, I wasn't even dressing up for the mistress. I was dressing for me. This was my armor. I picked a simple dress, one that made me feel confident without screaming for attention. I fixed my hair the way I liked it and slowly applied a deep red lipstick. It wasn't to look sexy, it was a reminder to myself that tonight I was stepping into my power. Every stroke of that lipstick felt like a promise. I'm taking back control. Before leaving, I sat down and went over the plan again in my head. I would walk in with Michael, calm, confident, composed. We'd sit at the table I had reserved right next to them. I imagined the way my husband's face would freeze, how the mistress's smile would drop instantly. The image was so clear in my head that it sent a thrill down my spine. When Michael arrived, we drove together and parked across the street from the restaurant. For a moment, we just sat there silently, the glow of the streetlights washing over the dashboard. He was rehearsing what he was going to say, and I could feel the tension in his jaw, even without looking. I checked my phone one last time to make sure there were no surprises. Everything was set. No turning back. Walking toward the restaurant felt surreal. My heart thumped so loudly I was sure Michael could hear it. When we stepped inside, everything felt brighter, sharper. I noticed the dim lights, the soft music, the clinking of glasses, little details that made the place feel too romantic for what was about to happen. And then I saw them. My husband was leaning forward, laughing at something she whispered. Their heads were close, his hand almost touching hers across the table. That sight should have broken me, but it didn't. Something inside me hardened instead. I felt grounded, steady. I wasn't the woman crying in the bathroom anymore. I was the woman who walked into the fire. Michael walked beside me, calm and steady. As we approached the tables, I felt dozens of eyes glance at us, but I only cared about two. The moment my husband looked up and saw me, his smile died instantly. The mistress's eyes widened in slow motion, like she was watching her life collapse in front of her. We took our seats at our reserved table, just feet away from them. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The silence between us was heavy, electric, crackling with the truth that was about to explode. I could almost feel their panic spreading across the room like smoke. And as I sat there, calm, collected, my chin slightly lifted, I realized something. Tonight, the power was mine. Walking into the restaurant felt surreal, like the world had slowed just for me. The soft glow of the chandeliers bounced off the polished tables, the low hum of conversation masking the storm I was about to unleash. Michael walked beside me, calm and collected, but I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on both of us. Every step I took made my heart pound, but I held my face calm, my smile gentle yet heavy with meaning. And then I saw him. My husband, laughing at something she had whispered. That laugh, that ease, the way he leaned closer to her, it used to make my chest flutter, make me feel safe. Now it made my stomach twist. I didn't feel anger yet. I felt power. I felt the quiet satisfaction of a plan I had been building for weeks about to fall perfectly into place. We approached the table slowly, deliberately, like we owned the space even though it wasn't ours. Michael slipped in beside me as I slid into my chair, and I watched as my husband froze mid-forkful, his eyes snapping to mine. Her eyes widened in disbelief, her confident smile faltering for the first time. I could almost hear the whispers spreading through the restaurant. The air thickened with tension, the world shrinking around our little table. I let my gaze linger on them, taking in every micro-expression. Guilt flashed across his face, panic flashed across hers. Every small gesture, every shallow breath betrayed their shock. They had been caught, exposed, and they didn't even know how to react yet. Michael leaned slightly toward me, subtle but deliberate, signaling he was ready, and then he spoke, calm, precise, deliberate. He didn't yell, didn't accuse, he laid out the facts. Texts, hotel receipts, messages, everything. Each revelation was a silent dagger, and I watched them flinch with every word. My husband opened his mouth, probably to deny, probably to explain, but nothing he said mattered anymore. Her lips quivered, searching for some excuse, some lie, some way to salvage her pride, but there was nothing left. Everyone in the restaurant could see the truth now. I watched them crumble, their confident veneer cracking under the weight of reality. I leaned back slightly in my chair, letting them feel the full weight of my calm. I didn't need to yell, I didn't need to make a scene. The storm I had built quietly over weeks was now visible, undeniable. I could feel every eye in the room on us. But I didn't care. His hands trembled and his fork slipped to the table. Her face went pale, her usual arrogance completely gone. And in that moment, I smiled, the same quiet, secret smile I had held for weeks. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the one holding the power. I was free. The tension in the air was suffocating. I could feel every heartbeat, every quickened breath around the table. My husband tried to recover, tried to speak, tried to explain, but his words fell flat before they even reached anyone. The mistress's eyes darted between us, searching for some lifeline, some excuse. But there was none. I let the silence linger, letting them stew in the weight of their own deceit. Michael stayed calm beside me, his presence steady, like a rock anchoring me to the moment. I felt the adrenaline buzzing in my veins, sharp and exhilarating. Every diner nearby could feel it too, the shift, the collapse of a carefully built facade. I spoke finally, my voice soft but steady, cutting through the tension like a knife. You thought you could hide your betrayal. You thought no one would ever find out. But here we are. The truth isn't quiet anymore. It's visible. And you get to see it, right in front of everyone. I let my gaze roam over them slowly, deliberately. His face was pale, every line of arrogance gone. Her confidence had evaporated completely. I didn't need to yell, I didn't need to cry. My calm, my presence was enough to make them crumble. Michael started laying out the facts more deliberately now. Hotel receipts, messages, evidence that couldn't be denied. Every word was precise, measured, surgical. I watched their reactions, his hands shaking, her lips quivering, their eyes wide, unblinking. The restaurant had gone quiet around us, whispers now overt, heads turning. Everyone could see the moment unravel. I leaned back slightly, enjoying the control I held. They were exposed, vulnerable, humiliated. And I felt no hatred, only satisfaction and clarity. I wasn't here to destroy them. I was here to claim my power, to show that betrayal has consequences. My husband's voice faltered when he tried one last plea, one last attempt to reclaim dignity. But I shook my head softly, letting him feel the weight of the silence. Her eyes filled with panic, and for the first time, I saw the mistress as vulnerable as I had felt all those weeks ago. The world had shrunk to this table, these 4 people, and the storm that had been quietly building for weeks. And in that moment, I knew I had won. Not through rage, not through shouting, but through the quiet, undeniable power of truth. I smiled again, I wasn't the victim, I was in control. And finally, I felt free. I leaned back in my chair, letting the tension settle fully onto them. Every diner's eyes felt like a spotlight, but I didn't flinch. I didn't have to. I was calm, composed, and completely in control. The air around the table was thick with disbelief and shame, and I allowed myself a quiet moment to savor it. I looked at him, my husband, and saw every ounce of arrogance, every false sense of control completely stripped away. And then I looked at her, the mistress, who had never expected to be caught so completely off guard. Their panic was deliciously obvious, but not in a cruel way. This wasn't about me humiliating them, it was about the power of truth. I spoke slowly, deliberately, making sure every word hit with weight. You thought you could keep this hidden. You thought you could lie, manipulate, and deceive, and that I wouldn't notice. But here we are. Tonight, everything is out in the open. My husband tried to speak, but I tilted my head just slightly, and the words died on his lips. I didn't have to yell, didn't have to plead. My calm was louder than any scream. "Look at yourselves," I said, voice steady, almost cold. "Every lie, every secret, every betrayal, it's all here. Everyone can see it now. No excuses, no apologies will change this." The mistress swallowed hard, her usual confidence crumbling. I could feel the shame radiating off her like heat. She had never been prepared for this, and I made sure she knew it. I didn't have to attack her. Just letting her face reality was punishment enough. I took a deep breath, letting it fill me with quiet power. "Enjoy your dinner. Consider it the last one you'll share without consequences, because from now on, the truth is the only thing that matters. And the truth, it doesn't lie." I leaned back slightly, feeling the full weight of the victory in the silence. No one could challenge it, no one could undo it. I didn't need anyone to cheer or witness my triumph. I had taken back my power, reclaimed my dignity, and reminded them and myself that I was not to be underestimated. I took another breath, letting the moment settle. This table, this confrontation, this storm I had orchestrated, it was over. And for the first time in months, I felt a calm I hadn't known in a long time. I was free, I was strong, and I was unshakable. Stepping out of the restaurant, the cool night air hit me like a wave of relief. The tension, the whispers, the judgmental stares, all of it stayed behind, trapped inside those walls. I felt lighter than I had in months, almost like I was breathing for the first time since discovering the betrayal. He tried to follow me, stumbling after me, his voice cracking. "Please, just listen." I didn't turn around. I didn't slow my pace. "No," I said simply, letting the word hang in the air. "There's nothing left to say. You've shown exactly who you are, and I don't need to hear excuses." The mistress was gone, disappearing into the night like the shadow she had always been in my life. Michael walked a few steps behind me, silent but steady, letting me own the moment. I paused for a moment, looking up at the city lights, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt clarity. Betrayal didn't define me, their lies didn't control me. Tonight had proven that truth and courage always carry more weight than deception. I sat on a bench for a moment, letting the adrenaline settle and the quiet of the night wrap around me. My phone buzzed. A message from Michael. "You did it. Proud of you." I smiled faintly. I didn't need validation, but it was nice to have a witness who understood exactly what I had done. I walked to my car, each step purposeful, each breath intentional. I wasn't angry anymore, I wasn't desperate, I was calm, I was in control. I realized that the betrayal had tested me, but it hadn't broken me. Instead, it had strengthened me, sharpened me, and reminded me that I could reclaim my life on my own terms. As I started the engine and drove away, the city lights blurred past, and a quiet smile formed on my lips. I wasn't looking back. The past, the lies, the heartbreak, they were all behind me now. The future was mine, and for the first time in a long time, I felt unstoppable. Weeks turned into months, and life slowly started to feel like mine again. At first, I found myself replaying that night over and over in my head. The confrontation, the tension, the moment their faces crumbled. But gradually, the sharp edge of anger dulled, replaced by a quiet sense of empowerment. I moved into a small apartment that felt like my sanctuary. Every corner reflected me, my choices, my independence, my freedom. For the first time in years, I could make decisions without worrying about anyone else's lies or manipulations. I filled my space with things that made me happy. Books, music, soft lighting, little touches that reminded me of myself. Each morning, sunlight streaming through the windows felt like a promise that the past couldn't reach me anymore. Work became my refuge. I poured myself into projects, meetings, even late nights at the office. I could feel myself becoming sharper, more confident, stronger. My colleagues noticed it too. I was more focused, more assertive, radiating a quiet authority that hadn't been there before. Every small accomplishment reminded me that I didn't need anyone else to validate my worth. Therapy helped me process the betrayal, to understand it as a reflection of them, not of me. I journaled, I cried, I laughed, and I learned to accept my emotions instead of letting them control me. Every page I wrote was a step further away from the pain, a step closer to freedom. I reconnected with friends who truly supported me and allowed new people into my life slowly, carefully. I laughed more, travelled more, and allowed myself to enjoy life again. Every moment was a reminder that happiness doesn't come from revenge, it comes from reclaiming yourself. Months later, I even ran into my husband one last time. He tried to apologize, tried to explain, tried to make things right. I listened briefly, calmly, and then said, "I've moved on. I hope you find your own path too, but mine no longer includes you." And I walked away without a backward glance. For the first time, I realized something important. Strength doesn't come from revenge. Strength comes from standing tall, from finding peace, from living fully, despite what others have done to you. The betrayal had tested me, but it had also shown me exactly how strong I could be. And as I looked out at the city skyline one evening, bathed in the golden light of dusk, I felt it, a hope I hadn't felt in years. Hope for a future unburdened by lies, full of possibilities, and entirely my own. Months had passed, and I had built a life that was completely my own. The confrontation at the restaurant felt like a distant memory now, and yet its lessons lingered, shaping every choice I made. I felt lighter, stronger, freer. I had reclaimed my life, and nothing could take that away. One evening, I overheard a conversation at a cafe, and I couldn't help but listen. A group of people was gossiping, whispering about a scandal. Then I heard it. The mistress had walked of her own marriage. My husband, he was left to face the consequences of his lies alone. The truth, it seemed, had a way of catching up with everyone. I felt a quiet satisfaction, not cruelty. This wasn't about taking joy in their misery. It was about watching the balance of life play itself out. Those who had deceived and betrayed were now facing their own reckoning. Justice didn't need my hands. It was happening on its own. Even my ex-husband was facing the fallout. No apology, no regret, no pleading could change what had been revealed, what had been lost. They had both learned a lesson the hard way. Trust, once broken, cannot easily be repaired. And as for me, I had moved on completely. I sat back in the cafe chair sipping my coffee, feeling the glow of my own independence. Life had given me a chance to rise above, to stand strong, and to reclaim everything they had tried to take from me. I realized something essential. True power doesn't come from revenge. It comes from living well, from being whole, from letting life reveal the truth naturally. I smiled, finally, fully, and allowed myself to feel peace. The city hummed around me, full of stories, full of secrets, full of lives in motion. And I, for the first time in a long time, felt completely free, strong, whole, victorious. Life had finally settled into a rhythm that felt entirely my own. The weight of betrayal, the sting of humiliation, the sleepless nights replaying every lie, they were all behind me now. What remained was strength, clarity, and a sense of control I had never known before. I often thought back to that night at the restaurant, the tension thick in the air, the way their faces had crumbled when confronted with the truth. At first, those memories had stung, but now they reminded me of something far more important. I had survived. I had risen. I had reclaimed my life. I stood by my apartment window one evening, watching the city lights flicker across the skyline, and I realized something essential. The true victory isn't in punishing someone else, it's in reclaiming yourself. It's in standing tall when others have tried to break you, in walking away from lies and deceit, in living fully and freely despite what they did. My phone buzzed with messages from friends celebrating small victories, checking in, sharing their support. I smiled at each one, feeling the warmth of connection and love. I didn't need anyone to validate my triumph because I already knew it. I had fought through the pain, I had reclaimed my dignity, and I was unstoppable. And then, quietly to myself, I whispered a truth I would carry forever. Never chase someone who can't choose you. Let them chase the person they betrayed. Both will regret it, but I'll never look back. The past was behind me, the future was mine, and for the first time in a long time I felt completely free, completely strong, and completely unstoppable.